Deadeye is, I think, about the last gear set that I still want to make a dedicated build video for. I know I still haven't covered the new Tactician, or Firecrest, or Banshee, but I just don't believe that those gear sets are good enough for PvP, so I don't want to recommend you a build that isn't really going to work. And I also don't want to cover Hunter's Fate or Predator's Mark because, well, first up, both of those builds are fairly straightforward to build. I mean, Hunter's Fate is basically stacking firearms and Predator's Mark is basically stacking stamina. And literally any other YouTuber has already covered those to no end as well. So with D3, Final Measure, Reclaimer, Striker, Sentry, Alpha Nomad, and Lone Star already done, I'm left with Deadeye. I have yet to talk about Deadeye. So to give you the short version, is Deadeye still viable in patch 1.8? Yeah, it can still be pretty good. Is it as good as Striker or Nomad? No, Deadeye is a lot more situational. Deadeye works almost exclusively in a 4-man team, but when you get those moments in fights when you're able to take full advantage of the set, it really does show. The gear set probably has the highest DPS output in the game at medium to long range. And it can be great if you use it within a squad, if you're manhunt, for example, and trying to kill the whole server. You run away a bit, and then you peek on a corner, you kill a few people, and then you run away a bit more, and so forth and so forth. It really works well in those situations. The way I would build it, though, is not the same as in patch 1.7, because we're not really going for that one-shot anymore. This is, first up, because of all the stamina changes. The one-shot is almost impossible. And with gear sets like Nomad, even if you get the one-shot, it still doesn't really help you kill the other player, because they just get an extra life. And, you know, if you're not going for the one-shot, then you're just shooting bullets with the M700. And that is actually one of the lowest sustained DPS in the game that you can have, even if all your bullets are crits. So, instead of going for an all-out one-shot build with Deadeye, I instead opted to go for something less risky, less of an all-in type of build with the SVD, and then Vigorous, and then also a house as a backup weapon for when players get too close. And I think that all of these things, the way I build it, it's pretty strange. It's pretty different from how you would usually see somebody make a Deadeye build. I think it's pretty unique, and I just want to show it off. So yeah, let's take a look at the build. With the Vigorous, I'm obviously running with the 5-piece Deadeye. I still believe that the 6-piece is too situational, and I would not really recommend anybody using it. Until something changes at least. I prefer Vigorous over Reckless nowadays because, as I said, I only run Deadeye in a 4-man team. And when I'm running a 4-man team, we usually run with 2 healers as well. We have 1 Reclaimer and 1 Final Measure healer. And with all those heals, Vigorous really helps out a lot to combat Deadeye's greatest weakness, which is oftentimes how squishy you are. I also didn't go all the way into firearms. I only have about 8,100 firearms as opposed to the usual 9 or even 10,000 that people have stacked with this gear set. And I have that for a few reasons. First and foremost, it's of course to have more survivability, even more, because going without stamina is extremely risky this patch, especially as a damage dealer, because if you don't have any stamina and you're face trading, well, you're going to be dropped in less than a second. But I also have this amount of firearms because I wanted to have some stamina to unlock Vicious on my house. Vicious sounds like a pretty bad talent to have on an SMG, I know, but I'll come back to this a little bit later into the video. And sure, you still have some guys that are going for the full 10k firearms with Reckless and only sitting at the back of a skirmish game, and that might work out great. You know, you're gonna get a lot of kills with that, especially on players that don't really know how to deal with Deadeye. For the DZ, however, when you're usually outnumbered, if you're the rogue player at least, and where a lot of the opposing players are oftentimes running Nomad, those players are gonna get closer to you no matter how much damage you have, because you can land 10 shots, you can land 20 shots, but you're not gonna burst them through their Nomads. And even if you do, chances are they'll have another proc. So you don't need that much damage, you don't need that much burst anymore in today's meta. It's just not what is required to survive manhunts. It's more about sustaining through all the players coming your way and wear them down over time. That's also the reason why we run 2 healers in the squad nowadays, but that's a whole other topic for another time. Point being is that Deadeye with 10k with Reckless is gonna get you killed. You're not gonna be able to burst through the Nomads, and when the Nomads get close to you and you have 10k firearms with Reckless, you're gonna die. So for those reasons, I went with more stamina and with Vigorous instead. Now my stat rolls, they're quite different from how they were in patch 1.7, where, you know, in patch 1.7 I would of course go full crit damage and skill haste everywhere to activate my booster shot and maximize my damage. But again, since survivability and since doing damage over time is more important this patch, most of my rolls are actually spec'd into survivability, which are health and exotic damage resilience, with the gloves as the exception. The chest piece has health and exotic damage resilience. The mask has exotic damage resilience and then also the usual burn resistance. The knee pads have health, bleed, shock, and burn resistance. The backpack has health and ammo capacity. The gloves have marksman rifle damage, SMG damage, and critical hit damage in the holster. And all the mods, they all have plus health as well. And the performance mods are all pulse critical hit damage mods because of course we're Deadeye and we need as much critical hit damage as possible. Now looking through this, you probably have a lot of red flags yourself coming from the old Deadeye, with the first one of course being critical hit damage on the knee pads in the backpack. You of course always want to get those because we have 100% critical hit chance on Deadeye. So you'd be a fool not to get a flat 9% extra damage, right? But not really. I think that still health is better, even on a Deadeye build. I've talked about this before, about how stacking the same type of damage buff leads to decreased effectiveness of such rolls. And generally speaking, players already have over 100% critical hit damage on their builds, which means that 9% critical hit damage isn't actually going to result in 9% more damage flat. Now I'm not going to bore you with a whole lot of math, I'll just get to the conclusions and say that's the only case where you should ever take critical hit damage on the knee pads and on the backpack is in the cases where the player does not have the option to exchange stamina for firearms without severely messing up his build. For example, on a Predator build that requires 9k stamina, or on a Deadeye build that already has 10k firearms. In both of those cases, you cannot get more firearms because that is not possible or it would mess up the build. Now, of course, I could still make the case for my build being one of those builds that could pick up critical hit damage, as swapping out more stamina for health on my build would not be possible because that would not allow me to get vicious on my house anymore. And that's actually something that I used to do. I used to run with 9% critical hit damage on both the knee pads and the backpack for that very reason. That's actually what I was running in my Deadeye stream highlights video that I uploaded about a week ago. But not only did I feel more squishy in those fights, and I couldn't stay in close-up fights for a very long time as a result of that, but I also later figured out that with some testing, and because of the way that the SVD delivers damage in huge chunks per bullet and not actually in small chunks of a lot of bullets, you actually, going for the 9% critical hit damage on the knee pads is actually not a good thing because you still kill most players in about the same time with the same amount of bullets. I did a lot of testing with my friend. First he got 400,000 toughness. Both cases it took me 5 shots to down him with and without the critical hit damage. Then he equipped a build with 500,000 toughness. In both cases 6 shots to down him. Then I did 600,000 toughness, and then in both cases it took 7 shots to down him. And the only time there was a noticeable difference is when he equipped a Nomad build with 600,000 toughness. It has full overheal already. In this case, the build with critical hit damage on the knee pads and on the backpack only needed 10 bullets to down him, while on the build with the health rolls I needed 11 bullets. So yeah, from this my conclusion is pretty simple. It's just not worth it because 9 out of 10 times it's not going to increase or decrease the time to kill because you still take the same amount of bullets to down somebody. Alright, and now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the weapons. I already told you what they are. I've got the House and the SVD. The House has Vicious, Responsive, and Card Counter. This is probably the second red flag of the video that a lot of people have because I made a video on why I do not use the House, and now in this video I am using the House, but the thing is I will only use this weapon when players are at very close range, and truth be told, at very close range the House is simply the best weapon in the game right now. The House just lags once you get beyond 10 meters, but once you get beyond 10 meters, that's the moment when I will swap to the SVD. Anyway, 10 meters might sound like not a lot, it might sound like that players are still too close, but especially on PC, it's very easy to quickly swoop your cursor to wherever the enemy is and just spam that fire button to quickly just down somebody. And the thing is, if you played House before, if you shot them first with the House, they're not going to expect this. They're just going to be downed coming out of nowhere. So you kind of use your House for most of the close-up fights, but then you get the SVD out as your hidden weapon, so to speak. When they're least expecting it, you burst a few guys down, and then you run away again and go back to your House when they try to push in. Vicious on the House works really well in combination with this build and this setup because we have Vigorous and a double healer setup, so I'm pretty much always going to be at full overheal. And if I'm not at full overheal, I should probably stop shooting and start running because, of course, I don't want to die. And because of this, I'm almost never going to fall below my second health segment, so that's 10% critical hit chance is going to have pretty much an uptime of 100%. And then I mod the SMG with critical hit damage mods and your usual extended magazine with rate of fire and critical hit chance. The SVD, this is an SVD that I'm very, very proud of, so to speak. I got one with Deadly, Prepared, and Competent. It took me a small fortune to get this one, as it's really hard to actually get an SVD like this, because the SVDs, they always come with Disciplined in the free talent slot, which is one of the worst talents that you could get for Deadeye. So to get this God roll, you'll actually need to find an SVD that has Prepared and Deadly natively rolled onto it as the first 2 talents already. Funny story, I crafted this one on stream a little while ago. I said fuck it and just spent all my crafting materials until I got it. I started with 3,700 weapon parts and 3,000 tools. I didn't get this God roll until 1 hour later, when I only had 600 weapon parts and 900 tools left. You can imagine the laughs that all the sadistic viewers had during that hour. It was pretty... I went through a pretty depressing moment that day. But I got it at the end anyway, so I guess I'm still kind of happy. Not only that though, but this SVD also has some special mods on it. Obviously they're crit damage, but both my scope and my underbarrel have a mod that both have 20% critical hit damage. Which is something that I still have from patch 1.3. You cannot get those anymore. The current maximum is 19% critical hit damage. And these mods also happen to have accuracy and stability as the 2 smaller rolls, which usually wouldn't be as useful, for example, a build with an assault rifle. But for Deadeye, this is literally perfect. So yeah, I got the most min-max Deadeye built in the game, I guess. Even though it's only like a couple of percentages extra. But yeah, I'm still pretty happy with this. And then the magazine is an extended magazine with 4% critical hit damage. And then of course also the rate of fire. Skills are the booster shot and the conceal pulse. These are mostly just to keep competent active. With 2 healers, this is very easy to do, even if I'm not running skill haste myself, because both of the healers should be running triage. And triage works group-wide, so with 2 skills I should always have competent active. And then I've got Combat Medic, Critical Save, Steady Hands, and Precision as my talent. Combat Medic, important for group play, speaks for itself. Steady Hands turns your SVD into a laser when entering cover. Precision gives you 25% more critical hit damage and 12.5% critical hit chance if you land a headshot, which is, you know, it's not always going to happen with Deadeye, but you are still going to land some headshots, and in those cases you're going to get a fat damage boost. And then I still like Critical Save. I don't know why, it's just one of my favorite talents, and I feel like I can almost always proc it if I want to. So yeah, I'm gonna keep playing with that as well. And that pretty much sums up my Deadeye build. I truly believe that this is the best way to build Deadeye Dispatch for group play in a DZ. Yeah, you're going to need a team. Yeah, you're going to need some babysitting, but under the right conditions, this build, it hurts, man. It hurts, especially when you're playing with a final measure healer in the team. And you get that 40% damage buff for defusing a grenade, you're just going to deal over 100,000 damage per bullet on other players. You can basically 3-shot 6k Striker players. It's very fun to play, at least it is in my opinion. It isn't better than Striker, that's not what I'm saying. Striker still has more uses, but it is something else besides Striker that doesn't suck if you just want to change things up a bit. That's going to be it for this video though. As always, this is the full build. Just screenshot it if you want to build it yourself, or download it through a download link in the description box down below. And as always, I'll see you guys later, or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.